humanity that returns our hearts and minds to sanity. Get out of unworthiness, get out of vanity, and get in the middle where there's a fresh start. The middle way is the way of the heart. I am listening. I am listening.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's what we're going to dive in today. The topic is recognizing our shared humanity. So we're going to start with a story. There was a king who thought if he knew the answer to 3 simple questions, he would have much success. So he would ask his colleagues and his friends and the people in the town there, what is the most important thing to do? When is the right time? And who are the most important ones? And he was always kind of grappling these questions. And he would receive so many varied answers that he finally realized that in order to really receive the answer, the truth for himself, that he would need to go to the mountaintop. And he would go to the mountaintop where the old hermit lives, and he would ask the wise hermit these questions. So he makes the trek to the mountain, and he gets to the top, and the hermit's there, and he's slowly planting seeds and working in his garden. And he asks the hermit his questions, and the hermit kind of nods and acknowledges him and just continues to plant his seeds. And, he's an older, frail man, so he's really kind of struggling to get the ground, raked and planting the seeds. So the king's sitting there for a moment and then notices that this man could use some help. So he's like, oh, can I help you, plant the seeds? So he helps him plant the seeds. And now the day has passed and the sun is starting to set. And he says to the hermit, do you have the answers to my questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to leave. And then suddenly they hear this rustling, and this man runs out of the woods, wounded, and then passes out right in front of them. So the king quickly goes to tend the man's wounds, and he's caring for the man. And then the man suddenly, feels better and kind of revives and looks in the king's face, who's there caring for him. And he looks at the king and he says, please forgive me. And the king's like, forgive you for what? I just met you. And the wounded man says, I am your enemy. I have come to kill you in seeking revenge because you stole my land. But now you have saved me. Please forgive me, and I will forever be indebted in of your service. So the king, of course, forgave the man. And not only that, but he said that he would give the man his land back. And so the king was sitting there feeling much more peaceful from this encounter. And he realized, though, he still didn't have his answers. So he goes to the hermit and he's like, okay, do you have, what are the answers? Can you help me? I still don't know, what's the most important time and who are the most important ones and what's the best thing to do? And the hermit says, but you do know. And he's still a little confused. And he said, well, when you came to me this morning, I was the most important one. And what you did was help me. So serving me was what was most important to do. When this man rushed out of the woods wounded, he was the most important one. The time was now, and the thing to do was to take care of him, was to serve him. So the king started to get it. The king started to get it. And he said to him, remember then, there is only one time that is important. That time is now. It is the most important time because it is the only time when we have any power. The most necessary person is the person you are with at that particular moment. For no one knows what's going to happen in the future and whether we will meet anyone else. The most important affair is to do good for the person that you are with. because we were sent to this world for that purpose alone. So that comes from Leo Tolstoy, a brilliant Russian writer. And there's a children's book based on this called Zen Tales or Zen Parables, something like that. So you were born for such a time as this. Now is the time. Look around you. Those that you are with are the most important ones. And what is ours to do is to be of service. There's a story of a woman who goes to the gates of heaven and, kind of knocks on the gates and says, God, we need some help. Have you looked? What's going on in this world? There's wars, there's struggle. What are you going to do about it? And God says, that's why I sent you. That's why we are all here. To realize that we have something to give. And to know that every action we take creates a ripple effect because we are all connected. We are all one in this web of life. This idea of oneness really truly shows that we are all energy. We are all connected. So therefore, every action we take, there is a ripple effect. So sometimes we can doubt, like, who am I to do this? Or is this really important? And what we also know, and what we're going to explore today, is not only is it important what we say and what we do, but our thoughts and our feelings. We can work in this kind of area of the invisible through our consciousness to create that ripple effect for good that we desire. And really begin to experience a world that works for everyone. That's the goal. So our topic, recognition of our shared humanity. When I think about this, to me, it brings up this idea of the beloved community. So I want to share a little bit about this concept if you're not familiar. So this is from the King Center. It says, Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. And I imagine if Dr. King was alive today, it might even say of personhood. Even beyond the gender binary.
Yeah.
We're always expanding, right?
Yes.
So in order to actualize the beloved community, we must recognize that we are all one and that everything we do has an effect. It's like this large web, and if you were, picture like a spider web and you were to wiggle one little piece of the thread, the whole web is affected. And I think it's important when we start to explore concepts of oneness, though, to still understand the value in seeing and recognizing our humanity. So I'm not talking about like a colorblind oneness where, we're all the same and I don't see color and I don't see differences. Because the truth is that God is expressing through each of us individually, uniquely, through our gender expression, through our race and ethnicity, through all the religions and the ways that we show up. That is the beauty of life, and that is the beauty of our humanity. And it's how God gets to know itself more fully through us in all the unique ways that we show up. So I just want to be clear that oneness isn't sameness.
Indeed.
There is the idea that we are all connected, that we are all divine, and there is this spiritual prototype back of all things that has never been hurt or harmed. That is the wholeness, that is the true nature of who we are, and that is true no matter how we show up in our humanity. So we are one, and we are not the same. Thank goodness, right? That would be a boring world.
Yeah.
And really it all comes back to, they say everything you need to know in life you learned in kindergarten. I think it's so true, and it's so great having, a little one, a 3-year-old back there, and seeing the world through her eyes, and that newness, and that lyric you said, where everyone's a potential friend. Cadence is a living demonstration of that every day. Hi, new friends, and really just seeing all the humanity and all of that. So everything we need to know, we learned in kindergarten. So if we were to go back to that first lesson of the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if you were to look behind this idea, the reason this idea, this thread of truth is in all of the major religions and philosophies and speech and spiritual teachings is because there's an inherent spiritual principle behind this idea of the golden rule, which is the law of cause and effect. So another way you could say it is, what you do unto others will be done unto you. For there is only one. We live in a reciprocal nature of the universe, and what we're putting out, what we're energizing through our thoughts and feelings and belief goes into this collective field. And so therefore, who we are being is always being matched and reflecting back to us. So what you do unto others will be done unto you, for there is only one. Recognizing our shared humanity. We are always planting seeds in this collective mind. And so the question is, are you planting seeds of love or fear? And some may even say love or separation, because fear can simply be seen as separation, meaning thinking that you are somehow not a part of all there is, thinking that you are perhaps separate from those in front of you, are separate from spirit. But the truth is, we are all love. Love is all there is. It's the very essence and nature of who we are. We are one. There's a lot of voices in the world right now of fear. You hear it in the news, you hear it in the media, you hear it in the coffee shop conversation. And these voices of fear are so loud right now. And what that means is I really feel we're at this like tipping point. So we're at this tipping point where those of us who are really called to anchor in to the love vibration must rise above and know that love transforms any fear. So to be able to see the news and hear the conflict and hear the fear and not judge it, but know the truth behind the condition. That's what we are called to do. When I think of this idea of a tipping point, I picture like a big glass jar, and it's filled with all this kind of sediment, like rocks and stones and sand that perhaps is settled at the bottom. And it's filled with water. And if you were to imagine water being this kind of affirmations or purity of thought, this love energy, this wholeness, the truth that we are, and through our spiritual practices, through working in the I'm trying to say invisible, doing our individual work in the invisible, we start to pour that beautiful water into this vase. But what happens as the water, the love goes in, all that stuff that's been settled at the bottom, the fear, the doubt starts to rise up, and the water gets really murky. And you can see through, and it all of a sudden it looks really dark, really scary. And so at one perspective, you could look at that, and you could just see the chaos. You could just see the fear, see the separation. And what we are called to do is see beyond the condition and know the truth, and to keep energizing that love. And as we keep pouring that water, eventually there's that tipping point. It's the chemicalization to where the sediment will rise and fall out of this glass jar so much that all that's left is this purity, this pristine water. So don't be seduced by the world of form and the loud voices of fear, because what we are being called is to be that fierce love warrior, to know the peace, to know the truth, to know the wholeness, and to allow everything else to just dissolve back to the nothingness from which it came. Let's take a look at this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Love is creative and redemptive. Love builds up and unites. Hate tears down and destroys. The aftermath of the fight with fire method, which you suggest, is bitterness and chaos. The aftermath of the love method, is reconciliation and creation of the beloved community. Physical force can repress, restrain, coerce, destroy, but it cannot create and organize anything permanent. Only love can do that. Yes, love, which means understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill, even for one's enemies. This is the solution to the race problem. So the more we choose to show up as love, we can be the one. Now is the time to create a shift in consciousness so that the world of form begins to reflect that which we know. And it's important to step out of our own comfort zone in order to listen to that inner guidance and see if we're called to take action and what that might feel, to expand ourselves, to share the good that we are, and to see that wholeness beyond circumstances, and do our work in consciousness. And I really feel like, people are called to different things. So there are those of us maybe that are really called to anchor in the consciousness of love. There are those that are called to be the hermits on the mountaintop and to hold that vibration for the evolution of humanity. And then those are called to be on the front lines, and perhaps, be in the political movements or be in the marches and be the revolutionary voice to activate change. And all and both are needed. It's like really appreciating this both and not judging one or the other. My mind sometimes can tend to go to well, what's the right way? Should I just pray or should I go march? And I'm always trying to figure out, like the king, what's the right one? What's the right way? And the truth comes always back to just listen to that inner guidance, and to ask myself, from where am I approaching this situation? So if I'm approaching this situation from what I may call below the line, or from fear, from lack, from somehow needing or wanting to change something because something's bad or wrong, that's not going to be as effective as if I come from a place of seeing the wholeness through the condition and being the energetic vibration of love to uplift those around me. So, my practice is always staying informed and perhaps, looking at things on social media. But as soon as I feel my energy kind of getting sucked down the rabbit hole of the fear and negativity, pause, breathe, reset, and get back, do that spiritual practice to get back to the wholeness and to see this is simply a reflection, a condition. It's not the truth. And I can go back and do the work by getting my mind right and raising my vibration and my energy, such then that the outward form becomes a reflection of what we know. It's always that dance. And to know that when we are called to serve, to look at those around us and to see where the need is, and to be that advocate for the underserved or underrepresented population, that we are serving from a place of wholeness meeting wholeness, not brokenness. Because if you go into service seeing someone else as broken or as a victim, we're simply energizing that dynamic, and it keeps people stuck. We can never truly heal until we see and know that it's wholeness serving wholeness. And when we can see others as whole, perfect, and complete despite circumstance, that is when there's the possibility for evolution, for the possibility of change. And it's important that we be humble enough to check our privilege. Just because someone's in a place perhaps of power or privilege doesn't mean necessarily that they have the answers. We must listen, ask questions, get to know others, understand their perspective, and be able to then be guided in that place on how it's best to serve, instead of always interjecting our own, well, you should do this and you should do this. And, we have a million ideas. Heather and I had the opportunity to live in Hawaii for a year, teaching theater to we had a contract there, teaching theater to the kids on the Army base. And when we were there, we met a young man who, from one perspective, you could look at and say that this young man was homeless, he was a high school dropout, and, definitely in need. Well, we just started engaging in a conversation, and what we learned is this young man told us, I'm not homeless, I'm houseless, but the island is my home. And he pointed kind of over there by the beach, and there were these sticks and this tree, and he's like, see, that's my home. And I'm intentionally choosing to live off the land the way my grandfather did. And so I sleep there for shelter, I fish there, and everything I need is provided right here on this island. This is my home. And what a shift of perspective, because especially at that time we were there in an election time, and so there were all these conversations around needing to fix the homeless crisis on the island, which were mostly coming from, the perspective of the rich white folks that had moved to the island, and then see these folks living on the land and think, my way's best, your way's wrong, we need to fix this problem. Where what was really needed was just some conversation and a willingness to listen and to hear another's perspective. So in that moment, that really taught me, who am I to judge? And what would it take to really be willing to just listen and to see someone else's story, and then see if there's something that I'm called to do. But not be too quick to judge, not be too quick to see a problem that needs to be fixed, but instead to just get curious. And then from that place, always checking in, how am I approaching this situation? And again, if I'm coming from a place of fear or doubt or thinking something's right or wrong, that's the time to just pause, breathe, get my mind right, and remember that all there is this one life, this one presence that is beauty, that is wholeness, that is truth. And that I'm always guided by this inner presence on what is mine to do. The time is now. And we can use our breath to drop into the now moment, to get still, to listen to that inner guidance, listen to those that are right in front of us, and be really listen. I think so often we don't really listen. My wife often reminds me of that. How much? I just told you that. You did? How often are we really listening? Or are we already 10 steps ahead in our mind, projecting what we think the answer is going to be, so we don't even hear what was shared with us? Guilty. Working on it. So the time is now. The most important one is the one you are with. And the thing to do is good. The thing to do is to serve. The thing to do is to connect. So I want to end with a poem by Daniel Laporte. And as I read this, I just invite you to close your eyes and just take in these words. You may hear this as an order, an invitation, or as the opportunity of lifetimes. How you listen is how you live. Can you hear the woman crying? Can you hear the soul gasping for clean air? Did you hear that? That's the sound of a good man asking, how can I serve? Only with all of you, mostly by being informed, entirely with your longing. Root your life so deeply into your soul that comparisons and materialism and status quo idealism and the lie called media realism cannot possibly sway your truth. You won't be a sucker for motivation. You will be a devotee of inspiration. You want to serve? Please say yes. Then do what ambition tells you not to do. Forget your goals and your regimes. Be very still and lean in to listen to the pain of the world. And then it will be very clear what to do when you know the truth. You will let your heart blaze, and your solutions will be fierce with love, fast with delivery, and sustaining. You will walk into any room and you will bring joy to bear on the situation. And it sounds like this. I am listening. I know who I am. I am here to serve. And so it is. Thank you very much.
Reverend Rainbow, Soundman Joe, we are in the flow, and all is well here at CSL.
Yes.
And on the earth we just got ourselves a second birth and a third and fourth, and our compasses are due and they're true north. Our compasses are pointing to joy. The way you change the world is following joy. That's how you're employed. Everything we do has an effect, so let's remember to connect. Fear's being stirred up in a dirty vase till the sentiment rises and we're okay. There's nothing left but love and praise. Now is the time. This is the place. Let's be kind to each other. Let in the grace. Now is the time. Now is the time. This is the place. This is the place. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let in the grace. Don't be a sucker for motivation. Be a channel for inspiration.
Yes.
One of them is struggling, the other is bliss, and you can channel the inspiration effortlessly for humanity. What is the most important things to do or see? It's to recognize our shared humanity that returns our hearts and minds to sanity. Get out of unworthiness, get out of vanity, and get in the middle where